So I wrote this book called What Bob Ross Teaches Us About Music Production. I've been a fan since I was a kid, specifically like staying home from school and catching him on what was our, I guess, PBS channel. And, you know, for some weird reason, I found that interesting as a kid, but I think it's because of so much of the wisdom that he has and that he shares, and how he's able to take like these lessons from painting and apply them to life. There's quite a lot of philosophy behind what he does, and I started noticing the connections to music production. So it was originally just going to be a podcast, and I take my notes before I start my podcasts, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was like, man, this is going to be a really long podcast. So I decided to turn it into a book, and it wound up being the longest thing I ever wrote. It's 33 pages. It's got 10 different lessons um, that are taken, but drawn mostly from quotes that he said in his shows. So I took the quotes and then kind of uh, expanded upon them into this book, and it's for all members of the Music Production Club. So it got sent out to you guys, like I said, about 40 minutes ago, 45 minutes ago maybe, and I hope you like it. I hope you find it inspiring and enjoyable. I've been going through a little struggle lately of finding meaning, and um, just everything in the world is so crazy, and the news cycle is so heavy every single day. Um, it's made twiddling with knobs and sound feel kind of silly to me sometimes. But paying attention actually to a lot of Bob Ross's stuff and trying to work through that a little bit has helped me feel a little better about everything. So it's kind of there for anyone that's looking for a little inspiration, or trying to feel good about your music and who we all are musically. I think a lot of artists, a lot of great musicians that we all love have a lot of quirks to them. And sometimes it's hard to see our own personal quirks as strengths. I know I have mine, and a lot of times they they upset me. I wish I was a better musician or singer or whatever. And I think though that's not the point of art, and that's one of the messages in there too. It's not about perfection; it's about humanity, and we are imperfect humans. So I hope you guys enjoy that. I'm pretty excited. I've never put something together like this before, so it's kind of fun.
Kind of
Thank you.
surprising during the endurance of Bob Ross. My son grew up watching him, the original ones. My grandson just a few Halloweens ago was dressed up as Bob Ross, and he actually had a Bob Ross chia pet. So it's really it's
Wow.
interesting to hear about your putting together some musical production thoughts around his philosophy.
Yeah, he's stuck around, right?
Yeah,
Somehow.
quite definitely.
And it is like funny, like one of the things I kind of mentioned in the book is like it's such a simple production. It's just him. I think two camera angles maybe. and and it's real time. It's not even edited as far as I know. And with so much on TV, and especially for kids where you're drawn to the flashing lights and explosions, there's something pretty nice about this. And as I was reading up on them and trying to learn more about them to do this, I found there's actually quite a large community of people that use him for like relaxation and falling to sleep, and even like the ASMR stuff that goes around these days on YouTube. You're familiar with? I don't even know what it stands for, but it's those videos where
Yeah, the sensations and the licking things and that kind of stuff.
yeah, just the very sensitive like microphone picking up on people doing various things that people find soothing.
Yeah.
Um, so he's actually like he's actually, I guess, tapped into that too. Ahead of his time. So yeah, that's a little thing that's out now. And should be coming. If it's not in your inbox now, it should be there very shortly. So I hope you enjoy it. So using hardware synths in Ableton Live is a lot of fun. Um, you any of you guys have any hardware synths that you're kind of interested in using and getting to incorporate into Live?
I just got a Mini Log XD.
Oh, cool. Those are cool.
Yeah, I've been doing it for about 20 years. So
Oh, okay. So you've been doing it. Any favorites? Anything you've come to a lot? Go-to synths or anything?
well, just my own menagerie. I have a Yamaha EX5, a Wave Station module, and a Casio CZ101,
Oh, wow. Very nice.
OB8 or OBXA that's not in the mix quite yet.
Yeah? Oh, wow. That's cool. Those are something. Those are cool. So maybe I'll let you run this session tonight. Yeah, that's cool. And the mini log too is like, man, what a great new synth. What a great time to be a synthesizer fan with all of this stuff coming out these days. It's unbelievable. And to get a polyphonic synth like that for so cheap, it's awesome. It's a great time. So let's see. Now, the first thing you could really do, this is probably the obvious thing, is just plug the synth directly into your interface, right? You just select the particular input that you have and plug it right in. I've got, let's see, we'll pick my Prophet maybe. I got the Prophet 6 here. So, I mean, that's the simplest thing, right? And probably the most go-to way of doing this, just to plug it directly in. I want to point something out that will make your life a little bit easier if you are doing that, is that you can name your inputs and your outputs inside of Live. So I've got a Focusrite Claret 8 Pre X, and it's got, it's an 8-channel input, but it's also got 2 8-channel ADAT inputs. So I've also got these 2 Behringer, I don't even know what they're called. They're nothing too fancy, you know, just a simple Behringer 8-input mic pre's. So I've got basically 24 channels of inputs going into my computer. And that can get confusing very fast. You know, you easily forget what's plugged into what. And I've made charts and written things down in notebooks, but it always changes and I can never find that stuff when I need it. So if you go into Live inside the preferences, you can go into, say, input configuration, and you can name all of your inputs. You can name the mono inputs. So my first input is my my Heil mic here, which I usually use for podcasting. And my second input is, it says Samson, but it's actually, I'm not using a Samson anymore. I could change that right now if I like. It's this lav mic that I'm talking into. It's not a lav mic, it's headset mic, I guess. But I also have, this interface has inputs on the front that you can plug instruments in. So I usually keep a guitar wire plugged in too. So I know that this is either my lav mic or my guitar. And then I've got various mics set up throughout the room on guitar amps and bass amps and a drum set back behind me. And this is all just right there. Very easy to find, all the synths that I have set up. And you can just go inside of Live when you're ready to pick something like I did before with the Prophet, and just, I don't have to remember that it's 13 and 14. I don't have to remember that my OP1 is 21 and 22. It's just written there, so I can just select it. And the same thing works for the outputs too. You can name all of your outputs. My output routing is less complicated. I just have these 8. These are my main studio monitors, and then I have the 3 and 4 going to a compressor, 5 and 6 going to a reverb, and 7 and 8 I treat like miscellaneous. Usually it's going to some kind of tape machine, VCR tape, cassette tape, if I ever want to record something directly in there. But I can't tell you how much time this has saved me, this feature that you can name your inputs and outputs. So I recommend that highly. Let's see, I got a chat going. I should pay attention to that, right? Okay, put that right there. I'm just moving things around to keep things smooth here. Okay, the other thing I do that is a big help also is I just have a Google Doc setup that has my inputs. I use this mostly. I've got a patch bay that I've got labeled right here. So my bottom inputs and my top outputs, I know what is connected where. So when I look at this mess of wires, I can tell what's going to what. My patch bay is kind of like, it's below my knee. So I'm not going to really be like looking at the little labels that you can pencil in on them. And besides, I'd probably change it so much anyway that I'd lose track. So having this is really handy. So I can just pull this up as a Google Doc whenever I'm working.
What kind of patch bay?
It's a DBX PB48. DBX PB48. Put that in here. DBX PB48. It's definitely that should say DBX, not DOX. I really chose it for price. You know, it had the number of inputs and outputs I wanted, and the price was right. So we got some people coming in. Let's admit them. There's a lot to keep track of here. I've learned, or I've heard, that if you don't monitor your Zoom meetings with these little waiting rooms, then anyone can pop in and start doing horrible things to your meetings. Zoom bombing, they're calling it these days. So Anand and it's Greg maybe? No, Greg was here. Someone else came in too, but I wanted to say hello to you guys. Welcome. Yeah, that's the patch bay though. It's nothing fancy. Just does the job. It's nice. Hasn't caused me any problems. I've got my inputs and outputs labeled in these little charts here. But I refer to these a lot less often now that Live has the input configuration here so that you can name these things. So let's see. No hardware, and it's okay. All right, so there's kind of like two different ways you can go about routing your hardware synths into Live. Like I said before, we can have the input set up here, which I should probably name this. We'll call this the Prophet. Prophet. Renaming. Quick key command is just Command R. So Command R. You can rename things real fast. And I might call this like Prophet MIDI. Because what I'm going to do here is use this as a MIDI track. I'm going to delete this. And I can take MIDI from any of my inputs and send it to the Prophet 6. Now I have my Prophet. This is a reason why I need this, because I have my Prophet set up on a different MIDI channel to avoid any conflict. And I think I labeled it here, but let's see, Prophet 6 is channel 9. Sometimes when you have a bunch of things connected, things conflict. So I have my synths on different channels. So now I am playing this push here, which I can change my camera for you guys so you can just see that. So I'm using the push now to send MIDI to the Prophet. Nice modulation on that. So it's sending MIDI to the Prophet. It's sending the MIDI out of this track and then sending it to this audio track. A nice advantage of doing it this way is that you can record directly onto this track, whatever's coming out of the Prophet. So I can be playing here. I accidentally activated the sequencer there. And then whatever I just played gets recorded there. Which is definitely forgettable. But we could also record the, I got this right now, this patch has a sequencer running on it. But I could also input MIDI here, kind of the normal way. Say, suppose I just do some notes in. Haphazardly, I've got them here. Let's turn that sequencer off again. And this, the nice thing about this is now I could go over to the Prophet, play around with some of the parameters on that. Playing with the filter right now in real time, and I can record all of that now just by hitting the record button here. And then we got whatever I just did there on this audio track now. So that's one way of doing it. But the way I like to do it the best is to use the external instrument device inside of Live. So if we bring this instrument into a track, the external instrument kind of does what I just did in these two tracks all inside one track in one device. I can select where I want to send my MIDI. So I got this sub-fatty, maybe we'll use that. Though I need to check what channel that is on. That is 12. And then I'll take the output from, where is that? Smoke sub-fatty. So now I'm using the push to control the sub-fatty. Which I guess I was hoping I can do something like this to show you guys. But I think what might be better, since that seems a little crazy, is to just switch camera angles to my other camera here. There we are. So I've got the sub-fatty here. I can control that now with the push straight in this one device, which is pretty cool. So I could record something on MIDI. Well, I don't know. Let's see what we get. There's somewhere. I just played some MIDI. I'll hit the capture feature, which is right up here on the top of our screen. So I've got some MIDI conflicts going on there right now, but here's what I played on the keyboard. And then we got something there that we can then go on and edit and play around with and have some fun with. So the external instrument is pretty nice too. It gives you a gain control in case the synth needs a little more boost. You can do that right here on the gain, but it's probably best to get it right on the synth and then going into your interface first. But sometimes things don't cooperate so well. For instance, I can show you this guy down here. There we go. So if you have a look, I don't know how well you can see this. It's kind of, can you even make out what I'm pointing at? Right here. So this is, maybe I can even move this down a little. Try to get it to you. This little fella here is called the MegaFM. It's by Twisted Electronics. This is always some fun when you got a bunch of things going and sequencers and all that. But This thing is called the MegaFM by Twisted Electronics, and it's an FM synthesizer that is the same FM Yamaha chip that they used inside the 16-bit Sega Genesis video game system. So it's got this very gritty, lo-fi feeling to it. It's awesome, but it's probably not for everybody. If you want like super clean FM sounds, use Operator. That's going to give you like really beautiful sounds. Use something like FM8 by who makes that? Native Instruments, I believe. Those are nice, clean digital ones. This is, I guess it's digital too, but it's I'll show you. We'll route this here to that would actually be USB MIDI, and I think this is just channel 1. That would have to change our. This might be exactly what I'm talking about. Am I wrong about that MIDI channel? It's on. Might be wrong about that. All right. Why don't I skip ahead then? Because something I wanted to talk about, and I'll come back to this synth because I've got it set up somewhere else. We can put this back onto my sub-fatty. Say, and I think that was what, channel 12, channel 9 maybe. Nope, we got to do this too. I got to set this MIDI over here, the sub-fatty. And I made that really loud. Apologize for that. What we have the power to do here is add audio effects to this. So for me, like a kind of obvious choice would be a delay. Put a delay after this. Now I've taken my sub-fatty and I've put it in the realm of delay, which is always a lot of fun. I might put on maybe a chorus. And, we have obviously any effect we want here, but maybe I'll put on a high-pass filter because I don't have that luxury on the sub-fatty. It's just got a low pass, so we can add our own high pass on it right here. So what I'm doing now is expanding the capabilities of my synth. I've got a chorus, I've got a delay, I've got a high-pass filter. We can select all of these, right-click, and group them. Or you can use the Command or Control-G shortcut. We group those up. And now, I think this is where it starts getting fun. I can map my low pass to a knob, maybe the resonance as well, maybe even the LFO amounts and rate. What the heck, right? I might map the amount of chorus. I'll map, and all I'm doing is right-clicking. I'm sorry if I'm going so fast. I'm right-clicking and just selecting which macro I want to map it to. You could click on this map button, and then you select the knob, and then you go over to this map button over here. I want to map it to macro 6, and there it goes. It gets mapped, and then you can select each parameter and map them individually. But I think it's a lot faster to just right-click and do map to 8. And it goes right where you want. And you can then go inside here if you need to adjust any of the parameter values. Like maybe you don't want the LFO to go that high in frequency. We might decide we don't ever need it to go super fast or that super slow. So we can constrain it a little bit. That's something you can do if you want. You can rename these. Command R to rename. I might just call this high pass. If I hit tab, I move right to the next macro, which is pretty cool. It saves you a second. can do resonance, LFO amount, LFO frequency sounds good to me. Chorus, then I could do delay amount, delay time, and then delay feedback. And now I've got these mapped out. And I like to color code things a little bit so I know what I'm looking at. So I might color my filter parameters the same. And maybe the LFO I'll give just like a slightly different color green. So I know that they're related, but they're a little different. Chorus, we get something totally different. I have a problem with my C key on my keyboard that it likes to double up every time I press it. So I apologize for that. If you see typos like that in my work, now you know why, because it seems like almost 50% of the time I press the C key, I get 2 C's instead of 1. But I've got this nice little rack here, and I can now use push and have control over all these parameters right under me. Some LFO on that filter. Crank up the chorus. And these are sounds I just can't get on the sub-fatty on its own. It doesn't have any built-in effects. It doesn't have a low-pass filter. I'm sorry, it has a low-pass filter. It doesn't have a high-pass filter. It doesn't have chorus or delay. And any effects you wanted to put on there, you can just add them yourself. Let's see. I got the question about the interface. It's a private question. Sorry, I read it out loud. I have the Claret 8 Pre-X. Focusrite makes it. Put that in the chat. Now that I've built this instrument rack, I can name it something. So maybe I'll name it Moog Sub Fatty. And something I like to do for my instrument racks is put my initials in the beginning. And the reason I like to do that is when I put it inside my user library, when I save it, which I can do, I can just click here to save this. All of my sounds will have BF in front of it. So I like to, you know, as I'm sure you know, I like to build my collection of instruments. But if I want to just go through presets in my library that are mine, I can hit Command F, which is the shortcut to get inside the search bar, and just write BF. And then all of this stuff, BF, is stuff that I've made. So I know it's mine. And that's just kind of a handy shortcut so that if I ever want to just use my sounds, I've got this way of doing it. But let's see. We made that instrument rack right here. And now whenever I want to use it, I can just drop it into a track. And I've got it. And I might even, suppose, you know, I've got a few synths set up here. I might decide that I want I've got the Korg MS-20, the kind of like remodel they made. So I can set up this MS-20 here. I think this is just channel 1. So now I'm playing the MS-20, which I don't know if you can see or not if I switch my camera. I guess you're not going to really be able to see it too well, but here it is. But now I can play it on my push. Sequence on the push. I've got this delay on it. I've got this filter. I've got the chorus. And all I would have to do is go inside here, rename this to Korg MS-20. And now I could save that to my library. And I've got it ready to go. And anytime I want to use that synth or this synth, all I need to do now is just drag it onto a track. It's so much easier. You could even add, we could add MIDI effects too. That's something worth pointing out. If I put this arpeggiator right in the beginning here, just hold down some notes. Now, The Korg MS-20 doesn't have an arpeggiator. But now it does. And that's kind of fun. Now, I would say there's maybe a slight, I don't know if it's a disadvantage, but since this is a MIDI track, if I hit record, I'm just playing some nonsense on here. So I've just recorded some long notes here. And the thing that I think is kind of fun is now I can have that playing. I can walk over to the MS-20 and start fooling around with its parameters. And the MS-20 is one of those synths. So hands-on, so fun. So it's really nice to have some sort of crazy pattern going that I can just now go over there and tweak it. I can get two hands on the knobs and just start having fun in real time. But none of that got recorded. So something might be sending MIDI to this I'm not aware of. But or maybe that note just got stuck. That does happen sometimes. Sometimes notes don't ever release because I guess it's not getting the note off message all the time. So sometimes you gotta kind of hit play and stop a couple times. But any of that tweaking I just did, since the Korg MS-20 in particular doesn't record the knob movements, it doesn't record the, it's probably annoying to look at. It doesn't record any of the movements that I do on the knobs. It doesn't send out MIDI. So I'm not recording that. I didn't get any of those movements. So if I wanted to get the movements and actually record the audio out of the synth, I do have to set up another track, an audio track, and have that listen to, now I don't want to do the MS-20. What I really want to do is the track here that I just set up. I want the audio to come from here because I've got all these effects going. And by setting the audio to listen to this track 4, I'll get all of the stuff that I do. So I'll get any movement I do on push or on these knobs and any movement I do on the MS-20 itself. Maybe I'll just demonstrate. So that starts playing. I can use my filter on here, play around with my delay. Lower the chorus. And I can go over here too, open up this filter. Fun spaceship sounds. Bring it in the second oscillator, which is higher pitched. I'll set it to a new modulator. Whatever I want to do. I've just got these options now, and now it's all getting recorded onto this other track. Detuned it a little bit there for a second. Everything I just did got recorded to audio here. So now we're listening back to the audio. Advance it a little bit. This is when I start playing with the oscillators, I think. All that craziness now got recorded. The nice thing about doing that is I can now make a new track with the MS-20 and keep going. or I can manipulate this audio. Now that I've got this in audio, I can do all kinds of weird things to it. Transpose it, I can reverse it, chop it up. You name it. There's a lot of fun to be had. So once it becomes audio, now it's something we can
Good
chop
evening,
up.
Cindy, comma.
What's that? Heard something there.
I told you I would reach out to you after the mural was complete. Period. Maybe you've seen it, but if not, swing by whenever you can, comma. We think it looks amazing, period.
Well, I think we have a side conversation going on, getting picked up there. Sometimes that happens. Another tip I have about doing this is to make use of your collections. So, do you guys use the collections inside of Live at all? Like these? That are like your favorites?
Yeah.
Yeah? I'd be curious to know how you guys set them up, because you can make them anything you want. Any fun tips that you have? Any fun uses? Well, things to try. Yeah, that's a good. I have something like that called Try Me. This is where I put, usually like when I get something new, or I discover something new, or something that I already have that I haven't really played around with yet. I'll put it in my Try Me category, and then I can go to these things when I'm bored or when I'm looking to experiment a little bit. I got some fun things to play around with. I've got one, this is probably the one I use the most, which is called hardware. And this is for all of the different hardware synths or effects that I have around. And I can just drag these right into a track. Like I do have one for the Moog Sub Fatty already, which I can just drag right in here. And it's all set up. It's got low pass with a resonance, a high pass with a resonance. It's actually got echo, not delay. And it's got a chorus. I can open that up for you to see. And it's got this, basically this is the audio effect rack inside. I've got these different devices. The low pass filter is an auto filter that turns on and then reduces the high end. And then I've got the resonance for that. It's a self-oscillating filter too, which is kind of interesting. You actually don't even need to do anything. You can just start turning on the echo. Get the feedback up real high. You can start making cool spaceship sounds if you want. I'll leave that before it gets too crazy. And this is all connected to that mode. Whenever I want to use it, I just drop it right on that channel. Now I've got this, I told you I was going to play with this MegaFM. So I've got it set up here. Now I'll take a look in here to figure out why the heck it didn't just work before. Oh, I had the wrong MIDI. It's actually this EMU thing. That's not this USB MIDI. I had the wrong MIDI selected. This particular synth, I think the reason I was going to show you this was because of this gain knob, but now that I look at it, I've actually got a different solution. I will switch my camera here so you can see this little guy.
What was the problem?
That I didn't hear it before?
Well, you said you have a solution, and I was wondering what the problem was.
Oh, right. That's a good question too. This particular synth is very quiet and temperamental. So right now I've got this like kind of clean sound. As soon as I Let me see. Let me turn down all these oscillator guys here. So when I crank these up, well, maybe I'll turn off the echo here. It is like already distorting. As I lower this volume, it gets much tamer. So the problem with this one is I kind of really need to turn up the gain to get the volumes right, because I guess it's just the nature of the chip in here. It breaks up quite a lot once it starts getting to the higher volumes. But if you want it to play nice and soft, you got to back the volume up quite a bit. So you could use the gain knob here to do that. So this way I'm adding the gain after the synth, not using the synth to do all the gain, because the synth will start distorting. Now it's got this kind of nice, cleaner sound. It's a very, if you listen, as things fade out, there's like, I don't know if we would call that aliasing maybe, but there's definitely some noise that happens. And as we start adding in the other operators, it's not, there's just a very slight sweet spot before it starts getting very aggressive. And then we've got the one that's voice modulating in. So the thing I wound up actually doing was using the glue compressor. I think I had this up to about 10 on that preset. Not really sure why I decided to use that and not just the gain over here. But now, since I've got that extra boost after the fact, I can dial some of these down a little bit and get the softer sounds at better volumes. This synth also, I put a tuner on it because it needs to be tuned. Like, these guys down. Let's see if I'm doing anything right now. So I'm playing an F, but I'm getting a C. There we go. Not getting much response out of this detune knob right now, for whatever reason.
So that's an analog synth?
I think it's digital. I guess it's digital. It's got the knobs and faders, which is nice, but it's an FM synth. So I
Okay.
think the chip is digital. It's a chip, you know. But it has very analog properties because it's so lo-fi. It's a 16-bit sound. You can kind of almost get a similar thing from it, or similar sound to it, when you like operators just look so clean, you know. But if I put a redux on here, now it starts to sound a little bit more like that synth. Imagine when I do the release as it fades out, that kind of noise. You really notice it on the decays. Not so much at 16, but that sounds kind of the way. Kind of the way that thing fades out. That kind of crunchy fall apart sound. But like having a tuner, like certain synths need to be tuned, you know. I mean, a lot of the newer stuff that's coming out they're pretty stable. But if you're using older stuff, and even some of the stuff I have, like these Behringers, the Model D Behringer needs a little bit of tuning sometimes, or it needs to warm up really. That's really what you need to let do. But then I find myself having to tune that synth every time I use it. So it's pretty handy to have a tuner. Then you can go in there and adjust as need be. This one in particular, because I'm playing a C, as I change this multi knob, I start getting all these other notes. Now the detune is doing a little bit. Just a little bit. It's pretty subtle. But I want to see, which is what I'm trying to play. About it. I might have something modulating that even. That might be part of the problem. Yep, that was the problem. I'm sorry. I had the LFO modulating the detune. So that would make a difference there. But for me, having these set up in my hardware section is so handy. And you could even like, let's say you want to use a few of your synths at once. Like maybe I want to use the Moog and this FM synth at the same time. I can take both of these tracks, and then what I might do is I've got a folder called templates here. I can take both of these tracks and just drag them into the browser here. And then I can rename this. It makes a live session. I'll call this Moog and FM. And if I open this up, this is just now an Ableton live set, just like you save whenever you make a project. And now we've got these two tracks inside this session. So even faster than just taking them one at a time, if you know you want to use a certain combination a lot, you can save them as a session here, and then just drag this right into your session. And there it is. Pops right in. You get them both nice and simple. And that can be something you keep in your hardware folder. It could be anything. You can save anything you want, any kind of live sets. I've got, I think the one that I am the most thankful for is my acoustic drums live session here, because it's got a group with a few mics set up. I can just drag this in. And it's all set up. I've got a group here that has these three tracks. One is a kick drum mic, and I've done some EQ and compression and a gate even on there. The snare, it's got a gate and some EQ and some compression. And then the overheads, I'm cutting out some of those lows and doing just a little bit of compression. That all goes into the group. And it's got the drum bus on there to give it a little extra, punch. But anytime I want to record drums, it's as simple as dragging that into the session, turning these mics on, and then running over there and start playing a beat. Probably don't need to see that anymore. Switch that. So this is such a good use of these features. This is just for bass guitar. I've got it mic set up on an amp, and it's just set up to listen to that microphone, and it's also got a tuner on it, so I can tune the bass when I'm recording it. I don't have to worry about setting up an external tuner or anything like that. It's a nice way to save some time. I have the same thing on my guitar, I believe. Another tuner, almost the same exact track. It's also got a little low end rolled off here, because I probably don't want anything down here on my electric guitars. The low E string on a guitar is about 80 hertz, like 82 or so. So I've just rolled off all that low so I don't get any rumble. And it's ready to go. It's got a tune or two, just ready to record. For me, sometimes the difference between actually recording and making music and not is the setup. Miking drums, for instance, is it's not that fun. I mean, I shouldn't say it's not that fun. It can be fun, but if I have an idea and I want to go, I don't want to have to invest all that time. So this is just kind of, I know I have a fairly decent drum sound, at least as decent as I can get off the drums I have. So it's ready to go.
Saves time.
Oh yeah, it saves time, and I'm sure you know how it is when you're excited about something. You want to get it down. You don't want to then have to start connecting everything and wondering why it's not working, and then trying to get the sound right. At least you've got like a starting point this way. And that's the same thing with all the hardware stuff. It's really like when I want to play any of these hardware synths, it's not that different than just loading up a VST or one of Live's synths. It's a matter of just dragging it on a track. What else do we have? I guess you've seen me do it, but I want my Model D. No, I don't want that. It's not. I don't have that one connected. I had to disconnect it for the camera. But I want the Sub Fatty. I can just drag it in here, and I'm playing it on probably 4 different tracks right now. But it's right there. Playing this FM synth now. And it's good to go, just like that. That's, I think, key for me. I know when I have to start setting things up, I half the time just stop doing whatever I'm doing. Run out of the energy.
Sure.
What do you think? Do you have any questions? Did I miss anything? Is anything you want me to go over with this?
I was wondering, in general, when would you go to a hardware synth as opposed to a plug-in? Just specific sounds you're looking for?
Yeah, that's really what it is. Like they all have their own quirks and their own interesting things about them. Like this FM one that I was playing here. Like, yeah, I've got operator, right? And operator's great. It's an amazing thing, but this is a different sound. And it's also nice just to get your hands on it too sometimes. Sometimes twiddling around with the mouse feels a little uninspiring maybe. But I guess a lot of it is whatever weird limitation that synth has. Whatever it is. The Sub Fatty, for instance, is just like the bass it's made for bass, I guess. Sub Fatty is the name. So it's just kind of like primed and ready to go for that. Like we could sit around with analog and try to get it there, but it's the sound is powerful. It's special that way. I mean, there's more we could really do with analog. It's got more capabilities, but for the job, the Sub Fatty is a monster. So yeah, it's like that. I guess it's very similar if you play guitar and you have 4 different guitars. Why grab that one?
There's also just a reality that the hardware synths sound better in many cases. I mean, I've had the Wavestation WS for almost 20 years now, and a few years ago when they came out with the software on all of those Korg legacy devices, I put that on just for some of on my computer, just for some of just for the hell of it, and they're just not the same. I mean, the chips and your sound card, the chips in the computer, try as they might, there is a difference on certain hardware, at least the hardware in my experience, compared to the software VSTs.
Yeah, the software has really come a long way, and it is amazing.
Yes, it is. It is, and I have a wealth of software synths that that 20 years ago you'd have never dreamed they could put out those sounds. But like I say, when you look at the software emulations of existing hardware, there is a difference.
Yeah, I wish I disagreed with you, but I don't. I know exactly what you're saying. It'd be a lot less expensive to disagree with you. It would be. I think the sound is hard to match, and it's almost hard to pinpoint too. I find myself using words like warm or heavy or thick, and but I think it's also there is just like I love the hands-on factor, the satisfaction of like turning the knob, like this filter knob on the Sub Fatty. It's a big knob that you can turn so little. You can just nudge it the tiniest amount, and it does a lot. Sometimes on the software side of things, and maybe it's MIDI actually. Just it's a little stepped. It's like instead of a smooth turn, it like does these little very small, and in most mixes imperceptible jumps, but it is like walking down stairs compared to like going down a hill. That makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's that's a big part of it. Even I mentioned I have the Behringer Model D, which I think is great. I mean, for the price and everything, it sounds really great. But the filter is a very small knob, and a friend of mine has one of the Model D reissues. It's the only time I've ever even played Model D, but I just had so much fun just very slightly moving that knob. And then with the resonance cranked, I could almost play melodies in the filter, like these like harmonic overtones that even on this one, like I really have a hard time doing because the knob is so small that a little turn does a lot. Whereas on that big knob, there's just so much travel. It's nice. I like. I love that we have the software stuff. I'm sure you do too. And but there is something about it, and I sometimes feel irresponsible saying that to people because I know it can lead to an expensive hobby. But there's something nice, yeah.
For a while, I thought it was just my audio interface and the fact that I was just using the sound card on the chip to try to record my EX5 and Wavestation and stuff. But then when I got the Sapphire Pro 40, that it still was there. The EX sounds better than any of the software, and the Wavestation. It's still I can't get the you can get the same sounds out of the software, but and at the same gain levels and the same volume, the same needles going to the same places. It's just a fuller sound out of the hardware.
Yeah, You know, I think there's something to be said too about sound traveling through a wire. Do you find that ever? Just going through a wire, electronics, like um, sometimes I think something just happens to it. I've I've been able to get some software to sound like a meteor, thicker, by running it
Yes.
out of the box and then maybe through something and back in. It adds a new character to it. Um, but it's still, I guess it's different, but it's a trick, you know, to lend some weight to those sounds.
On that same note you're talking about, do you use many audio effects, like external audio effects?
Here and there, yeah. Some guitar pedals. Um, I've got this the Electron Analog Heat, which is like a distortion box, which is pretty
And
nice.
follow up to that, how do you deal with the latency of sending the audio out, bringing it back in? Or is it fast enough with your interface?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I never really worry about it too much.
Gotcha.
It's quick enough.
Even with an audio signal, there shouldn't be any latency going out to an external audio effect. I mean, I have an old Digitech Studio Quad 4 that has a whole lot of stuff, and whenever I run either software, Synths, or the hardware through it, there's really no latency that I've ever had to deal with.
Yeah, I've never measured it. I mean, I guess, right? There must be, because if you plug a mic in and you run it through anything, you can have, depending on your buffer size. But I've never really had that issue. And if it was, I'd probably just slide it over, you know, a fraction of a whatever. I want to say a fraction of an inch, but you know what I mean. I might just move the audio file, or even you could so you could but that's the wrong button. You could do the track delay that can offset things, and also the I got one here. These external devices, they do have some latency that you can adjust for. You can experiment with that. Might help if you run into that problem. I haven't really, with effects, I haven't really had to deal with that in any noticeable, meaningful way, at least.
Cool.
I love doing that though. Like, I will run, and sometimes not even through effects. Like, I'll run audio into like cassette tape machines and not even record it to the cassette. Just run it through the electronics and back out. And that can sometimes add character. I do like to record to like different tape mediums, but yeah, like I think that journey through some electronics and some wires brings a little extra life to sounds. You know, probably like what's that?
Or a tube amp.
Yeah. Why not? You know, reamp. That's a great thing to do, to send something out, plug it into an amp, and then mic it. That'll really alter the sound of any software you have. I do see Paul wrote a question about doing program changes for MIDI clips. I've never done it before, actually. If you go into a MIDI clip, you do see like bank sub program. I've never experimented with that.
You can do it. It's a pain in the butt, and each one of your VSTs is going to respond differently, especially the ones that have several banks and then numbers within the banks. I haven't every time I play with it, I figure out a couple of sounds that I would like to change over, and I can figure out how to do it. But even within a VST that seems to be responsive, I generally can't get bank changes within the VST. You can find one if you set it in one. You can change patches within the bank fairly readily, but anything other than within the same bank, you can't seem to make big changes. And sometimes when you think you have it figured out, you'll go to a different VST, and it just seems kind of unresponsive to anything that you're trying to do down there on the program change section of the track. So it's worth playing around with just to see how your particular VSTs respond. But I try it off and on, over the years, and it's kind of hit and miss.
Hmm. Okay, so that's on VSTs. I imagine it must be a whole other situation on hardware.
Well, I have, I have, I have an old Digital Music Corp MX8 MIDI switch. It's programmable and everything, but the channel change directions from Ableton out to my hardware Synths, it can work. I have more trouble trying to turn off patch changes on the VST side that I'm controlling with my keyboard. And there's different workarounds and things that I have to do on the Ableton side, and with a couple of pieces of MIDI software to filter out program change messages when I want to change a patch manually on the keyboard, that it doesn't get reflected into the Ableton session on any keyboards that are coming in on that same channel, or any VSTs that are listening on that channel.
I think that sigh might say it all. Now, are you doing this like in a live performance situation, or is it
Now
just...
this is just me in my bedroom and for myself.
Yeah, I ask. I'm just I've never found myself in a situation where I have wanted to be able to change anything. I guess within a clip like that, like I would just push the button or turn the knobs, really. But I guess I could see if you're yeah, it makes sense, and especially in a live situation, you're doing things fast. It would be nice to have that happen.
Well, and on certain things, when your CPU is up there 50-60%, you don't want to just bring in a couple of more instances of a VST so that you can
Yeah.
have patches going. So you can, if you have a compliant VST, then you can just do a program change on your clip.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't ever have any experience trying to do that. I don't know what would happen. But it doesn't sound like a real wonderful experience from you.
No, it's not. I don't know what it would be like in a live situation. I shudder to think about it, but I'm sure somebody's tackled it and has it figured out.
Yeah, I guess this might be a job for YouTube, right? Take a look and see if someone's got that mapped out for us. I haven't experimented with that myself though, and I don't think I'm going to now after that review of your experience. Cool. Yeah, well, I don't know. I went through all my notes here, so I don't know if you guys have anything to add or anything else you want to talk about or want to call it a night. Yeah.
I'm good.
It's the little things though. I didn't know you could put 3 colored buttons on those favorites lines over there,
Oh,
where
like
you have red, yellow, and green. Yeah,
yeah, you can put them in multiple categories, which is pretty cool.
yeah. I
Yeah.
hadn't stumbled on that yet.
Yeah, I think it can get you into trouble sometimes. I know there was a point where I was just putting everything in my favorites, and then I was like, why do I even have favorites? But it is nice sometimes. Like this particular effect rack that you're looking at is what you see inside all of um, those hardware things I built. Like when you open this Moog, so that you can have these filters and these chorus and this echo.
Oh, so you can just drag that on any instrument you put down there.
Yeah, yeah. It's like these are kind of like some go-tos for me. You know, that I find myself wanting to have my hands on a lot. So I've got it not only in my hardware area, but in my utility stuff and my FX stuff. Yeah, a couple of them make it into more than one. That happens a lot with the try me category too. It's like, oh, that was a cool thing. It's
What do you consider utility sequencers?
well, anything that's like a sequencer, like these arcade series devices by Isotonic, which are
Okay.
really fun. I get, yeah, I guess, like egg shaker loops. That's a utility for me. This is a dry wet rack. So this rack here is just something I set up that has 2 chains. So if I have an effect that doesn't have a dry wet knob, I can put it in the wet chain and then use this to mix the signals, the dry and the wet. What else? Yeah, the limiter, color limiter. Color limiters in the pack, Creative Extensions. That's a free pack on Live Site. Creative Extensions. It's got some cool stuff in there. Pitch drop. This is an effect that I guess I can put it over here. So this is like if you hit stop on the record player and it slows down until it gets quiet. So you can tell it how long you want the drop to take. Let's say a bar. And you can also unsync it. So that's a Max for Live device. That's about a 10-second pitch drop. Yeah, little things like that. Sometimes it's like EQ type things. Envelope followers, one I use a lot. That's a Max for Live that will listen to it listens to the audio and then draws an envelope, which you can then map to any parameter you want. So I can map the envelope this creates to say this low pass filter. Now that's not going to work because that's before the fact. You got to put it after. But it's allowing the filter to open based on how loud it gets. You want to set that a little bit. That's a great device, the envelope follower. You can set anything to it. You could set your microphone. You could put that on your microphone channel. I'll do that for you just to show you. Unless you already know this.
Now this is helpful.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna put this. I think I had it on here, right? Envelope follower. I'm gonna put it on this audio track I just made, and this audio track is listening to the mic that I'm speaking to you guys through. And we will put this here. You know what? I will just put, I guess, a utility. This would be under utilities also. Is it not? I don't have utility under utility. That's so funny. We'll add it. But I'll mute this so we don't hear myself talking. But every time I speak, I create this envelope. Probably bring this down a little, maybe like there. And I can map this to that. It's already mapped to that low pass filter. So as I talk, this knob moves. And maybe I'll bring it down just a little bit here. This is the range of the knob. So it'll start at 25% and go all the way up to 100, depending on how loud I talk. So literally this line, this envelope that we're generating through the volume of my voice is what's controlling this knob on this track. So we'll only really hear that synth sound when I talk. And I can make it fall a little slower. So you can see the slow goes down a little slower now. You can make it rise slower even, so it doesn't jump right away.
How is that different than a sidechain setup?
It's kind of like a sidechain. Yeah, it's like a sidechain, really. You're just using the volume of one signal to control a parameter somewhere else. And then you can actually set it up to control 10 different parameters, which is kind of fun. So I made a video about this a while back. It was like control effects with your voice, I think I called it. So it was just like you could use your voice to just turn up things. It'd be kind of fun, I guess, like delay. Like I want delay. Just say it. Almost like a Siri, Amazon Echo type of thing. Alexa. But yeah, it's the same idea. You're using one signal to manipulate another parameter. That just makes it nice and easy. I guess that's my utility type stuff. A lot of those Max for Live things find their way in there. Probability ARP. Some kind of arpeggiator, I guess. Yes. Yeah, I haven't played with this enough to know how to use it really. I know this is cool though. I'm just holding down 2 keys. But this is just kind of like a zany arpeggiator. It works on probability. How much is the rate going to get modulated? How much? I don't know. I forget who makes this. Usually they write it on there. It doesn't say. Yep, little things like that. I'm not super strict either, you know. An oscilloscope. This I believe is a free thing you can get. Put it after the sound so that you can see your sound. That one is on maxforlive.com. I just wrote an oscilloscope and found it. I'll write that. Have you guys been to maxforlive.com?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, yes. There's all kinds of goodies in there. But I think that's where I got this one. A lot of them probably. Notepad is kind of handy. This is by Elephant. I don't know if you guys know Elephant. That's a hard one to write in the message. It's the word elephant without any of the vowels besides the first E. But that's Tom Glendening. He's an Ableton certified trainer too, and he's Originally from South Africa, but I think he might be in somewhere in England right now. But he's got such good stuff on his site. Lots of cool stuff. And Notepad is just you just take notes. Like you might say like don't forget to cut the lows. I don't know, whatever you want to put in there. You might put in the name of the patch or whatever, any kind of note you want really. This I think allows you to change the color of your text or your notepad. It's a little thing like that, but it's handy. It's utility. So we'll have to come up with some ideas for the next chat we do, and I'm I'm wide open to anything you guys want to do. I didn't talk about using FX, but I thought that would probably be like a good option too, using external effects. It's similar to this, but it's a little bit different, I guess, too. But open to suggestions if you want to add them to the Discord or email me or anything you want. Try to come up with some good ones for August. I enjoy doing these. These are fun for me.
You mentioned you have a Behringer. It's just a what kind of device is it? I mean, I have an old Euro rack that most of my hardware goes through, and then I just do an audio feed into my Sapphire. But the Behringer D that you have, is it just a regular mixer, or is there other? Or is it a USB mixer, or what is it?
Oh, it's a Model D.
Yeah, the Model D.
It's like a Moog. Where's my camera here? It's a clone of the Model D. Let's see. I think I could probably.
Oh.
That little guy. This guy here.
Oh, it's a synth.
Yeah, it's a synth. It's
Okay, I thought you were okay. Never mind.
It's supposed to be a like near perfect recreation of the Model D.
Okay.
It sounds very good, I must say. And that friend I was telling you about that has the real Model D also has this, and he's very impressed with it. He bought his Model D before this came out. So I think it does sound great, but the real Model D is it's got a presence just when you look at it. It's a beautiful piece of furniture. Even it's when you see one of those in a room, it already takes up like your attention and space and feeling. But this is in a Eurorack format. You can actually take the I think you take the wood sides off and then the back, and it's got the connectors for Eurorack.
Right.
And this one too is another Behringer. It's called the Neutron, and it's semi-modular, and that's also something you can just drop right inside a Eurorack case. So they're like made to that size. And the Neutron's pretty cool too, and they're around $300. Okay. Take care. Have a good night.
Okay. Good night.
BP, no, not you guys. BP's.
Oh.
I got a private. I see you guys didn't see that. Oh, you already left. Okay, get out of here. Yeah, these are cool. They're. I even got. I think the Model D. I got like a floor model, and it was only like $250, and that was a good price, for what that thing sounds like. It's pretty solid.
Looks like it's 300 now. Basically.
Yeah, I think that's
Mhm.
the normal price. Oh, you know, I could send you a track if you want to hear them both. Actually, I did a track. Where is it here? This track here. How do I get this to open into a new window? There we go. All right, I need to hear it. But this track, if you are interested, is it's the Model D and the Neutron. These two synths here. I sequenced them with the Arturia, what is it? The key step. So I just made a sequence on the key step and ran them both through like Ableton's Echo device, and there's a lot of delay feedback going on, and it's just the two synths receiving the same sequence, but I'm playing around with the knobs and tweaking everything the whole time, and it makes this kind of like hypnotic 14-minute track. But it'll give you an idea of like what they sound like anyway. I think a lot of cool sounds came out of it. They're nice. I recommend them. I do. I know Behringer is kind of controversial for, I guess, a few things, copying hardware and cloning things. But I don't know. I was never gonna buy a real Model D anyway. It's just out of reach. So. Right. Well, all right. Maybe we'll call it a night there then. It's a lot of fun hanging out with you guys. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, really enjoyed it myself.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah, if you guys have any thoughts about future things, I mean, also these meetings, they don't have to just be me talking, leading discussions. I mean, if you guys have stuff you want to show, or maybe you work on some music and you want to talk about it and share what you did, that'd be pretty cool too. So, you know, the door is wide open for me on these. So I'm totally open to any suggestions. I think we could have a lot of fun with these.
Very good.
Cool. All right. Well, I hope you have a good week. Staying safe and all of that. And I look forward to seeing you guys again soon.